because this is a book that I would read almost every day when I was little. This is an old book. It's so old that I've had to tape the spine of the book and I've had to tape the inside of the book. But you can see my mommy gave me this book in September of 1994. And this was one of the very first books I've learned how to read. And it's important to me and it's special to me and I wanted to share it with you. So I'm going to read you this story. And it's pretty funny if I do say so myself. This book is called Buck Buck the Chicken. Buck Buck the Chicken. Buck is not like other chickens. She does not eat corn, she does not live in a hen house, and she never lays any eggs. Buck is Nancy Smith's pet. Nancy's father won her at the county fair. He guessed the number of jelly beans in a jar and took Buck home. Now Buck lives on the Smiths' front porch. Buck, buck, she says each time they come outside, and that is how she got her name. Buck likes to go for walks with the Smiths. She nods at everyone as they pass. Once she followed Mr. Smith to his office, but the elevator man would not let her go in. "No chickens allowed," he said. Another time, Buck followed Miss Smith to a dress store. A woman there thought she was a hat and wanted to try her on. That night, the Smiths had a talk with Nancy about Buck. "Why can't that chicken stay home and act more like a chicken?" asked Mr. Smith. "Wouldn't you like a dog or a cat instead?" But Nancy did not want a cat or a dog. Buck is my best friend, she told her parents. Buck lets Nancy swing her on the swings, put doll clothes on her, and take her for rides in a baby carriage. "Goochie, says Nancy as she tickles Buck under the chin. Buck blinks with joy. One day in July, Nancy and Buck went to the park. "Hi," said Liz Martin. "Can I see your baby?" "Buck," says Buck, flying out of the carriage. "What a smart baby," Liz said. "Mine hasn't even started talking yet." One summer, Nancy Smith's friends got to know Buck. She went on picnics with them. She went to the swimming pool she went swimming at the town pool. One Saturday in August, Nancy and Billy Gray took Buck to the movies. During the scary parts, Buck hid under the seat. Buck is a chicken," Billy said to Nancy. "Don't you dare call my chicken a chicken!" cried Nancy. When fall came, Nancy had to go back to school. "Be a good chicken while I'm gone," she said, waving goodbye to Buck. Buck nodded, but later, when Miss Smith went jogging, Buck followed her for miles. When Buck got tired, she flew onto Miss Smith's head. Miss Smith could not jog with a chicken on her head, so she and Buck had to go home. "That chicken is bored," said Miss Smith at dinner. "Maybe she needs to peck in the dirt like other chickens." "That's a great idea," said Mr. Smith. They took Buck with him to the garden. All evening long, he hoed and raked while Buck ate the weeds. But the next day, when no one was home, Buck went gardening all by herself. That was the end of the vegetables. "Maybe she's just young," said Miss Smith. "Let's give her another chance." "Goody," said Nancy. "That means she can come to my birthday party." "She'd better behave," said Miss Smith. When it was time for the birthday party, Nancy and Buck decorated the front porch. Buck loved the balloons. She popped every one. "What's all that noise?" asked Mr. Smith. I didn't hear anything, said Nancy. She and Buck Buck put on their party hats and waited for the kids to come. The first was Joey James. He knew Buck Buck, but his mother had never seen her. Buck Buck ran to meet them. "Buck, Buck, Buck, Buck," she said, flying up and down. "Attack chicken! Attack chicken!" yelled Miss James, and she hid behind a tree. Mr. and Miss Smith ran outside. As soon as Buck Buck saw them, she hid behind the tree too. "Please forgive our chicken," said Miss Smith to Miss James. "This is her first birthday party." When all the kids arrived, there was ice cream and cake. Then they played musical chairs. Buck Buck wanted to play too. She flew from chair to chair and would not let anyone sit down. During hide and seek, Buck Buck gave away all the hiding spaces. Then everyone played pin the tail on the donkey, and Buck Buck pulled the tail off the donkey. "I forgot to tell her the rules," said Nancy. "I'm sorry," Mr. Smith said. "That chicken has been bad once too often." And he locked Buck Buck out of the house. There was nothing more that Nancy could say. She opened up her presents, then everyone watched some cartoons on the Smiths' VCR. "Buck Buck, Buck Buck," called Buck Buck from the front porch. She made so much noise that Mr. Smith closed the windows. Now it was quiet. But when the birthday party was over, Buck Buck was gone. "I want my Buck Buck," cried Nancy. "We hurt her feelings," said Miss Smith. The Smiths looked all around, but no one had seen Buck Buck at the supermarket, or the firehouse, or the laundry, or the police station. But everyone wanted to help. Soon people were walking all over town looking for Nancy's chicken. But when it got dark, Buck Buck was still missing. The Smiths were very sad. They sat together on the porch steps talking about Buck Buck. "Maybe I was too hard on her," said Mr. Smith. "She didn't know any better," said Miss Smith. "Buck Buck was my best friend," said Nancy. "She always knew what to say to me." "Buck Buck!" "Did you hear that?" said Mr. Smith. "Buck Buck!" "What is that?" asked Miss Smith. "Buck Buck!" "It's Buck Buck!" yelled Nancy. Sure enough, Buck Buck had come home. She was sitting in a rocking chair with her feet tucked under her. When the Smiths petted her, she stood up, flapping her wings. Something white gleamed in the darkness. Buck Buck had laid her first egg. "That's one smart chicken," said Mr. Smith proudly. "Buck Buck," agreed Buck Buck. From that time on, no one had to tell Buck Buck to act more like a chicken. She made a nest in the rocking chair and laid her egg in it every night. In the winter, the Smiths built Buck Buck a house of her own. There were 2 rocking chairs inside, one for Buck Buck's nest, and the other was the chair that Nancy Smith sat in every afternoon when she came to visit. I hope you liked that story. Like I said, that was one of my favorite stories when I was little. I hope that you're enjoying your Monday. I miss you very, very, very much, and I can't wait to see you soon. I love you. I hope you have a great day. Bye-bye.